Hello, and welcome back to the channel. The manhwa we are going to recap today is about a maid who escapes the children Maid leads to protect and care for them. So let's begin with our recap. The story begins with a man watching Roland closely, urging him to activate his magic. Roland does as told, beginning to release his powers slowly, but the process is smooth, almost graceful. The man, observing the ease with which Roland responds, is visibly pleased. He thinks to himself that if he feeds him well and administers a few more doses of the magical power inducer, this human body experiment will soon reach perfection. He then turns to Melissa, instructing her to bring the bottle. It is a potion, foul-tasting but necessary. He asks Roland to drink it and bear with the unpleasantness. It is a magical inducer. Karina stands nearby, watching everything unfold, her thoughts swirling. She wonders when exactly Rank began feeding Roland these inducers. In the story, she remembers, if Roland continues to take the potion from this day forward, what will run through his veins will no longer be human blood, but the deep blue liquid of magic itself. Melissa, her eyes full of hesitation, walks over with the bottle and hands it to Roland. He accepts it without a word. Karina's heart beats faster. She wonders, is today the day from the story? If so, what happens now will be irreversible. Her body moves before her thoughts can catch up. She steps forward and slaps the bottle out of Roland's hands. Rank immediately turns on her, his voice cold cast steel, demanding the meaning of her actions. Karina has nothing to say. She lowers her head and simply apologizes. But Rank is merciless. He warns her that if she dares to interfere with his experiment again, he'll cut off her limbs next time. Karina apologizes again. Rank, without waiting for another word, slams the door shut and mutters that they are all utterly useless. That will be all for today's experiment. This old hag needs a beating for real. Back in their room, Melissa worries aloud. What if Karina gets scolded because of them? Karina brushes it off, assuring the children that she's fine, and then asks them if they're all right. Both children nod. She strokes their heads gently, telling them to rest for now. But as she turns to leave, Roland clutches at her skirt. With uncharacteristic hesitation, he asks if she can stay a little longer. But then, as if changing his mind, he quickly lets go, saying never mind, she's probably busy. It is the first time Roland has ever reached out to her. Karina can feel it. He must be scared after what just happened. She knows it. They can't go on like this. But with a soft smile, she promises him to wait for her. She will come back later. Once outside, her expression shifts. The weight of reality presses down on her. Now that she knows Rank has been feeding inducers to Roland, she truly cannot stay here with the children any longer. She has to escape this hell before they suffer more. In the story, Karina remembers from her past life, Roland and Melissa are the children of Rank's late younger sister. After being abandoned at an orphanage where their mother passed away, Rank took them into his manor. He only did so because both children showed magical talent. But Roland's talents proved exceptional, icy, and powerful beyond imagination. Rank's greed grew insatiable. He began nurturing a dark ambition to raise Roland into an archmage, one strong enough to rule the world. Whenever Roland disobeyed, it was Melissa who paid the price. Rank punished her instead, and his punishments were inhumane. Melissa passed away within a few months, but Roland was not even given time to mourn. He was forced to continue down the path to become an archmage. Several years later, he became the most powerful archmage in the Empire. On the night he saved the Empire from a calamity that would destroy the world, he killed Rank. But even Rank's death could not absolve Roland of the guilt. He never stopped blaming himself for Melissa's death. His life remained one of endless pain and sorrow. This was the story Karina had once read. Back then, she could only wonder, what had these children ever done to deserve such cruel fates? Tears prick her eyes. If even one person had cared for them, maybe they wouldn't have suffered like that. You are crying, I am not. But now, she is no longer just a reader. She has awoken in this world. Although she had forgotten the plot at first, understandable, since it was one among many fantasy romance stories she'd read in her past life. Everything came rushing back the moment she saw the children's bright smiles and heard them call out to her. She knew then she had been reincarnated into this world to make these children happy. Since that realization, she has been preparing in secret. She started planning their escape, diverting food and living expenses behind Rank's back, and slowly gathering the funds they would need to survive outside. The capital city, Edmure, is one of the rare cities far from the manor, bustling with a large population, making it their best chance to disappear. Finally, she is ready. As for escaping the manor itself, she wonders, could this be the only option? Rank usually naps from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. That leaves them with a 3-hour window, the only time the magical minions don't patrol. But she has already spent 2 hours in a packing. That leaves just 1 hour, only 1 hour to flee with the children. Time is tight, but if everything goes as planned, they can escape safely. No one can know. If they are caught, none of them will survive. Karina knocks softly at the door and asks if she may come in. The children welcome her. Roland, flustered, gets up. He thinks they have to prepare for another experiment. Their uncle hates to wait. Karina quickly assures them to relax. They aren't going to see him again. Melissa's face lights up. She assumes their uncle has granted Karina permission to play with them. Roland asks her, carefully, if this means she's really going to spend time with them. Karina clenches her fists at their innocent questions. Seeing them like this, how could she not act? Both of them need nothing more than love. She meets their eyes and speaks with clarity and resolve. She tells them she knows a safe place, and now is the time. They will leave this manor together. I'm so excited to see how this goes. Karina gathers her thoughts, eyes flicking toward the window where the skies outside remain gray and quiet. She tells the children that Rank is planning to conduct another human body experiment soon. Melissa immediately pales, her voice small and afraid, asks whether he's going to scold and punish them again. Karina shakes her head. She explains that this is precisely the reason why they must leave the manor now, before anything worse can happen. Melissa, ever gentle and trusting, agrees to go with Karina without hesitation. But Roland isn't so sure. He quietly says that Rank would never let them leave. He is right to be wary. But Karina leans closer and says that she has an idea. She asks if they've ever made a homunculus before. Her tone is careful, not scolding. She makes it clear she's not trying to reprimand them. She only wants to help them escape. She then explains her plan. The idea is to create a homunculus, an artificial human crafted through magic. Though the spell is forbidden and dangerous, requiring unwavering focus and immense magical ability, Roland and Melissa are not ordinary children. They can do it, especially Roland, whose potential to become an archmage is unparalleled. She turns to Roland and asks, as gently as she can, if he would be willing to make a homunculus of Rank, one that could fool everyone in the manor long enough for them to escape. Roland hesitates. He's always been afraid of using his magic. But then he looks at Karina and says that if it's for her, he'll try. He's scared, but for her, he'll do it. Melissa places a comforting hand on his arm. She tells him that if he's confident, they can definitely do it. She believes in him. Roland pulls her into a hug and says that it won't be so scary if she's with him. Melissa reassures him. They'll succeed, just like last time. Karina smiles warmly and tells them that they'll handle the magic, and she will handle the talking. Time is short. They must begin right away. Melissa turns to Roland and asks if he's ready. Both children nod with determination. The homunculus is created, and what stands before them now is a magical copy of Rank. Karina can hardly believe it. The resemblance is eerie, down to the smallest detail. Most people wouldn't be able to tell the difference at all. The children are proud and excited. Karina pats their heads gently, telling them they've done a great job. Then, with her heart pounding, she says it's time to go. Rank is sleeping, and this is their only chance. They step out of the manor carefully. The first person who stops them is the butler. He sees the Rank copy and asks if he is going out. The homunculus, eerily quiet, nods. The butler frowns and asks where he wishes to go, saying that he needs to prepare the carriage. Karina steps in immediately. She explains that due to the side effects of a recent spell, Rank cannot speak. She says they are going to the forest to retrieve a herb that will reduce those side effects. Her voice is sharp, her eyes steady. She adds that unless the butler wants to worsen Rank's condition, he should hurry. Our girl is a smooth liar #women in male-dominated field. Flinching, the butler quickly agrees. He says he'll prepare the carriage at the rear entrance. Karina has managed to fool him, but she knows better than to lower her guard. They won't truly be safe until they leave the city. Halfway through their trip, Karina realizes something. The family emblem on their carriage might reveal their identities. It could blow their cover. So she tells the children they'll leave the carriage here and walk the rest of the way. Roland protests. Walking would be slower, wouldn't it be safer to ride? But Karina lifts both children down and tells them that once they reach the town, they'll take a faster carriage to another city. They have to be careful. The magical rink begins to dissolve. The spell has reached its time limit. Karina urges them to hurry. They left the manor with just 1 hour of Rink's nap remaining. He might be awake by now. She tells the children to hold her hands tightly. When they finally reach town, she approaches a man and asks where they might find a carriage to Edmure. They want one that leaves immediately. The man yawns and replies that there aren't any carriages to Edmure today. Karina's heart sinks. She's about to ask something else when Melissa tugs on her sleeve and points. Karina's eyes follow and freeze. One of the men nearby, he was at Rink's mansion. Her blood runs cold. Has Rink already noticed their escape? Has he set people after them? Karina, masking her panic, quickly asks the man about a carriage behind them. Where is it headed? The man says it's going to Taurus. It's not ideal, but they have no other option. She says they'll take it. He warns her that the carriage is already full. They'll have to ride in the luggage compartment. Karina nods. That's fine. They'll take it. She turns to the children and tells them they'll reach the town soon. They can rest for now. Melissa beams, excited that they escaped without getting caught. Roland quietly says that now, no one will force them to use magic. Karina smiles at them. They don't need to do anything like that anymore. It's over now. She's hopeful. Hopeful that the children will finally live a peaceful life, unlike the one she read about. Roland turns to Melissa and says they don't have to be scared anymore. Karina watches them, her heart full. She chose the first path she could find, and though it was rushed, it was the only way. The carriage begins to move, but then a cold memory surfaces. Taurus, that name, she's seen it before in the novel. Her eyes widen. Claude Taurus. He is a name that spells misfortune. Known for his obsession with magical talent, Claude earned the nickname Talent Fanatic. He would do anything to recruit powerful mages, anything. And Roland, the original Roland, had always been one of his targets. Roland had rejected every offer. After being refused so many times, Claude developed a grudge. Whenever Roland found a place to stay, Claude would show up, stir trouble, and force him to leave. He continued this cycle for decades. Because of him, Roland could never form lasting bonds. People avoided him, afraid of getting caught up in Claude's wrath. In the end, Roland lived a life of isolation. That wasn't the life he had wanted. He had only ever wanted peace. Karina clutches her skirt, heart tightening. Once Claude recognizes Roland's talent, his happiness will be over. Bro will be like, let me live, you stupid people. The group finally reaches their destination. After a long and exhausting journey, the sight of Taurus breathes life into their tired bodies. Melissa is captivated by the scenery, the buildings, the flowers, even the air itself feels different. Everything here is so pretty, vibrant, and full of life. The scent of delicious food wafts through the streets, making their stomachs rumble despite the weariness. Karina watches the children carefully. Despite the fatigue of their travels, they are still full of energy, running slightly ahead, eyes wide with wonder. Karina is glad. She's glad they made it to Taurus safely, even if it cost more than she had anticipated. But beneath her calm exterior, worry eats away at her. Taurus was supposed to be just a temporary stop, a stepping stone toward the capital. But the reality hits her harder now. She only has 100 Curvin left. That isn't nearly enough to get them to Edmure, and from what she's heard, things are far more expensive in the capital than they are here. Unless she finds a way to make more money soon, she and the children might have no choice but to live on the streets. In the original story, Claude and Roland meet a little boy named Jay near the outskirts of the city, the one the Duke had wanted to recruit, not realizing he was only 8 years old. Karina recalls this detail absently, her mind trying to sort through her limited options. She knows she has no choice now. She must find work and earn the money they need to continue their journey. Crouching down in front of the children, she quietly tells Melissa and Roland that they will be staying here for a while. Roland, confused, asks her if they're not going to Edmure anymore. Karina hesitates, but admits that they simply don't have the funds to go right now. They'll have to wait, just for a little while, until she earns enough. She asks if they're all right with this plan. Both children nod eagerly, their spirits seemingly unaffected by the shift in plans. The idea of staying in this lively place for a while excites them more than it bothers them. They head into an inn, hoping to find lodging. The innkeeper tells Karina it'll cost her 10 kurvan for the night. She points out the sign outside which says 5, but he explains that's the rate for one person, and he's charging her for 2, not 3, strangely. He then asks how the children are related to her. His eyes are sharp and suspicious. Karina hasn't discussed this with the children yet, but seeing no other way to put the man at ease, she says that she is their mother. The innkeeper stares at the children for a moment, then comments that they must take after their father. He finally hands her the key and tells her they can stay in the room at the end of the corridor. Inside the room, Karina sits down and apologizes to the children for calling herself their mother without asking their permission. She explains that it was just to avoid suspicion. She didn't want the man to think she'd kidnapped them. She tells them that they may face more situations like this in the future and asks if it would be all right if she pretends to be their mother when necessary. The children's reaction surprises her. Melissa lights up with joy and says she's always wanted Karina to be her mother. Roland silently agrees, his eyes soft with affection. Karina knew the children were fond of her, but she hadn't realized they felt so strongly. Melissa beams and declares that from now on, she'll call her Mother. She hugs Karina tightly, and Roland joins her. Karina embraces them both, her heart full as she tells them they absolutely can call her that later. Karina tells Melissa to stay and rest while she goes to find work. Melissa asks where she's going, and Karina reassures her, saying she's just checking around for any job opportunities. Before leaving, she reminds the little girl not to open the door for anyone. Melissa agrees cheerfully, and Karina steps back into the bustling streets. She searches tirelessly, but every place she visits turns her away. The moment people look at her, their expressions harden. No one is willing to give her a chance. She faces rejection after rejection, each one cutting deeper than the last. Eventually, the last shop on the street, a large building with jewel signs and polishings, becomes her final hope. She opens the door and sees an older man working intently, polishing stones. She mentions the job posting she saw outside. Without even looking at her, the man asks if she knows the difference between a ruby and a garnet. He explains that he only hires people who know how to handle jewels. Karina admits she doesn't, but pleads, saying she can learn quickly if someone teaches her. The man, clearly pressed for time, tells her he needs someone who can start immediately and can't afford to teach every little thing. He tells her to leave. She tries to argue, but sees he's already turned back to his work, his mind elsewhere. Disheartened and exhausted, Karina turns to leave. Just as she steps toward the door, another man enters. He greets the old man, Wilder, and asks him to assess a magic crystal again. Karina considers calling it a day. Her body is heavy, her mind spinning. But then something catches her eye. A small stone, lying innocently on the counter, sparkles in a strange, mesmerizing way. To Karina, it looks like any other stone, yet for some reason, she can't tear her eyes away from it. Her body starts moving on its own, drawn toward it like a moth to flame. Wilder notices and shouts at her to step back immediately. But her hand moves on its own, and she reaches for the stone. Panic flashes across Wilder's face. The man who brought the stone dashes forward. As Karina's fingers close around the gem, her entire body is overcome with searing heat. She gasps, eyes widening. Pain explodes through her, and her knees buckle. She's about to collapse when a hand grabs her wrist, and in an instant, the overwhelming heat is replaced by a sudden, soothing coolness. Her vision blurs. Someone must have poured water on her, she thinks vaguely. A voice asks if she's all right. Karina's eyes flutter open, and she realizes she's being held in someone's arms. Startled, she shoves him away and struggles to her feet, confused and wary. The man stands too, brushing himself off. He seems annoyed that she pushed him after he just saved her. Karina apologizes quietly, still trying to catch her breath. She wonders what just happened. Did the gem explode on its own? The man tells her that without his help, she would have died. The energy from the gem would have torn her body apart if he hadn't stopped the eruption just in time. His gaze shifts to Wilder, sharp and angry. He scolds the old man for leaving such a dangerous gem out in the open. Wilder protests, saying he tried to stop her. But the young man doesn't let up. He demands to know if Wilder understands the gravity of what could have happened. Karina watches the exchange, still trembling slightly, when something Wilder says makes her freeze. He addresses the young man as Duke. Karina blinks. This man, this stranger who saved her from being torn apart by a mysterious gem, is none other than Duke Claude. She stares at him stunned, She doesn't know it yet, but this moment, this strange, dangerous, sparkling encounter, will be the one that changes her fate forever. The Duke is quite handsome. I'm sure he is not a villain, but still brownie points for him. Karina straightens herself and speaks clearly. She is Karina Blute. The name earns a faint tilt of the head from Claude, who admits he's never heard of the surname before. Karina responds with calm confidence, saying she moved here from another county. But inwardly, her thoughts are spinning. Why would someone like Claude, a high-ranking noble, show up in a small, ordinary jewelry shop like this one? In the original story, Claude was the very reason Roland's life began to spiral. After coming of age, Roland found himself at odds with Claude. That conflict had lasting consequences. Commoners began to avoid him, unwilling to get tangled in noble affairs, while nobles and royals alike began a desperate scramble to recruit him, each wanting to claim the young genius for their own. It was all because of a rumor that Roland was an extraordinary talent, acknowledged by none other than Claude himself, the so-called talent fanatic. Established mages even went as far as offering Roland positions in powerful factions. But Roland had never wanted that life. What he longed for was something ordinary, something warm. A peaceful life surrounded by the people he loved. Our hero is a family guy so sweet. Cutie patootie. Karina knows all too well that if Roland crosses paths with Claude, the same future awaits him. That pain, that isolation. That theft of a simple life. She cannot allow it. She must avoid anything, anyone, connected to Claude, no matter how small the link. So she thanks Claude politely for saving her life and decides to take her leave. But before she can walk away, Claude speaks again. He says he overheard their conversation and knows she is looking for a job. Karina nods cautiously. It's true. Wilder quickly jumps in. Flustered, the old man tries to recover from earlier, urging her not to be in such a rush. Didn't she say she wanted the job for the sake of her children? He says he's willing to pay her a fair wage, more than fair, in fact. A sum that would allow her to properly raise her children. Claude looks intrigued. He must have heard her mention her children earlier. Wilder makes his offer, 900 kurven every month. It's a generous sum. Wilder knows it. He's confident no one else in Taurus would offer such a price to someone with no prior experience. Karina is stunned. That much money would be more than enough. Enough to feed the three of them. Enough to cover the cost of the journey to the capital. And yet, fear still gnaws at her. If Claude ever sees Roland, because of her, it would all fall apart. Everything she wants to protect would unravel. So she forces a small smile and declines. She tells Wilder she's grateful for the offer, but insists that she's not suitable for the job. She turns and walks out, ignoring his calls behind her. Back at the inn, the three of them sit down for dinner. The portions are small, and the food is barely enough. Melissa and Roland both insist they're full, but Karina sees the truth in Melissa's eyes. Moments later, Melissa's stomach growls loudly. Flushed with embarrassment, the girl insists again that she is full. She tries to change the subject, saying she's going to brush her teeth, even pulling Roland along to stop him from eating more. Karina's heart aches. Melissa knows they're sure on money. She's trying not to make a fuss, not to be a burden. But at this rate, they may end up starving before they reach the capital. That 900 kurven offer replays in Karina's mind. It wasn't just generous, it was a lifeline. More than enough to sustain them. Enough to keep the children healthy and warm. Enough to get them safely to Edmure. Karina stands. All she needs to do is be cautious. Never bring the children to the shop. Keep Roland far from Claude. Be careful just until they leave this place. If she can manage that, nothing will go wrong. She tells the children that she forgot to buy more food yesterday and will go out to get some now. They cheer up immediately, excited by the idea. She walks back to the jewelry shop, her decision clear. This is temporary. She'll work here just for a little while. Nothing will happen. Roland will never meet Claude. But when she opens the door, she sees Claude again. He's standing there, calm as ever. Karina thanks him again for yesterday, but Claude cuts her off. There's no need to keep thanking him, he says. She's said more than enough already. He then asks what brings her here. Wilder watches her expectantly, clearly hoping she's changed her mind. Karina nods. She asks if the job offer is still available. If they're truly willing to pay her 900 kurven each month. Wilder's face lights up. He asks if she's changed her mind and invites her to sit down and sign the contract. But Karina raises a hand, firm and resolute. She will sign, but only under two conditions. First, she wants to know what caused the eruption yesterday. Was that stone a magic crystal? And if something like that happens again, she says she won't be staying. She explains that if she's injured or worse, there will be no one left to care for her children. Her words leave Wilder speechless for a moment. Claude steps forward, his expression serious. He tells her the eruption wasn't her fault. It was Wilder's for leaving a volatile gem out in the open. Karina is confused. She didn't use magic yesterday. In fact, she's never learned magic, not even once. Wilder sighs and confirms Claude's explanation. He says he never thought anyone near him would have the ability to trigger such a reaction. That's why he let his guard down. But what happened proved otherwise. Karina asks again, why did it happen to her? Wilder answers carefully. Because she has the potential to become a mage. Claude confirms it. The eruption was a magical one, a rare and dangerous phenomenon. These eruptions happen only in 3 cases. First, when a mage attempts a spell they aren't skilled enough to control. Second, when someone pushes beyond the natural restrictions of magic. And third, when someone fails to suppress a magic crystal that's spiraling out of control. What happened yesterday was the 3rd case. That crystal had become unstable. Her mere presence, her aura, triggered it after prolonged exposure. Karina repeats herself. She's never practiced magic. Never even learned it. Claude nods. That's the reason he said she has potential. Even those born with magical gifts must train to become real mages. But in Taurus, mages are extremely rare. Most who are born with magic never realize it. That's why Wilder had been careless. Wilder assures her that if she begins working here, things will change. He promises to manage the crystals strictly. What happened yesterday won't happen again. Karina breathes deeply. Then she speaks her second condition. If she decides she wants to quit, they must let her go. No questions asked. Wilder tries to ask her something, but Claude steps in, cutting him off. Perfect, he says. They'll seal the deal. He turns to Wilder and adds with a smirk that the old man will treat her so well she won't even want to quit. Karina, reassured, agrees. She looks at both men and asks, what does she need to do first? Her journey begins here, the first step into a world she never planned for, one that might change everything. Claude begins the day by calling Karina over with a calm yet purposeful tone. There's something he wants her to examine first. Wilder appears from the back, carrying a crystal box with both hands, his expression serious for once. He sets it down carefully, and the 2 men explain that they've recently come into possession of 15 unbalanced crystals. These are rare, volatile, and notoriously difficult to appraise, something that might take even seasoned experts years. Karina recognizes the term immediately. Unbalanced crystals, the kind Rank used to study and handle, though she herself has never actually seen one. She recalls the stories he used to tell her, all of them tinged with awe and danger. But to see them in person is something entirely different. She leans in to observe the contents of the box, intrigued despite herself. Wilder, grinning with that usual smugness, gestures for her to take a closer look. This, he says, is what she'll be dealing with from now on. His tone is light, but there's a challenge buried in it. As Karina begins to examine the crystals one by one, she quickly realizes how similar they appear, irregular shapes, subtle glimmers of unstable light pulsing within their cores. It takes her a moment, but then her eyes land on the one in the center. The moment she looks at it, something inside her recoils. A chill passes through her, and she instinctively flinches. Claude notices her reaction immediately. He watches her with quiet intensity. Wilder, on the other hand, bursts out laughing, claiming there's no way she saw anything. After all, they all look the same. But Claude swiftly silences him with a sharp glance and a curt command to hold his tongue. This isn't about guesswork. He wants to know what Karina felt. After a moment of hesitation, she points to the crystal in the center and declares that only one among them is a true magic crystal. Wilder's amusement disappears instantly, replaced by stunned disbelief. Yet Karina's hand is steady as she reaches into the box and retrieves the one she's chosen. She passes it to Claude without hesitation. Claude accepts the crystal with a subtle smile. He had suspected it. There was something about her, something in the way she sensed the crystals with such clarity. She's a natural, clearly gifted. He offers no further explanation and simply turns, pocketing the crystal. Without missing a beat, he instructs Wilder to handle the rest of the crystals. Wilder protests, clearly unenthusiastic about the task, but Claude walks off without responding, leaving the burden entirely to him. With a groan, Welder mutters about how he's just been handed more work, yet there's a grudging admiration in his voice when he glances at Karina. He acknowledges that Claude clearly has a good eye, and now so does she. He reaches out to shake her hand, a quiet welcome to her new reality. Days pass. Karina settles into her work at the jewelry shop. The tasks themselves aren't too demanding. Most of it is simple upkeep and errands. But the true value lies in what she learns. Welder, when not sulking about his workload, teaches her about ordinary stones, rubies, granites, and the like. He's detailed and methodical when it comes to those. But when it comes to magic crystals, his approach shifts. Instead of explanations, he simply hands her a crystal and asks her to tell him what she feels. It becomes clear to Karina that Welder and Claude share a close bond, though the nature of it is hard to define. There's an ease between them that suggests long years and unspoken understanding. That closeness gnaws at her more than she expects. One day, distracted by thoughts, she ends up saying Welder's name aloud without realizing it. Welder, amused and curious, questions her sudden outburst. Karina brushes it off, saying she simply noticed Claude hasn't been around lately. That's enough to make Welder nod knowingly. Claude, he explains, has likely been absorbed in studying that unbalanced crystal from earlier. Since childhood, Claude had a tendency to lose himself in such work, disappearing into it for days. Satisfied with the explanation, Welder tells her that's enough cleaning for the day. He calls her over and asks her to recall what she felt from that first magic crystal. There's a moment of quiet between them as she focuses. Welder watches her carefully, then finally speaks with real conviction. Her ability is rare, and if she continues like this, she'll have her own shop one day, one even larger than this modest place. It's a promise, not just encouragement. Karina laughs, half disbelieving, and asks if he's a magic crystal merchant himself. He admits that he's not, though he works with them often. In his opinion, the trade isn't a bad one, if you can tolerate the company of difficult people like mages. That leads her to a question she's been holding back: is Claude a mage? But before Welder can answer, the shop door opens and Claude steps inside, as if summoned by the thought alone. Karina turns to greet him, startled by the timing. Welder, ever quick with his tongue, remarks that they were just speaking of him. Claude casts a glance at Karina, his gaze unreadable. She tenses slightly and admits that his name came up while they were discussing magic crystals. Claude accepts this without comment and walks forward, pulling a small pouch from his coat. He hands it to Welder, who peers inside and immediately stiffens. The contents clearly carry weight. Welder asks if the pouch came from the imperial family, and Claude confirms it. The crystal inside has been giving him a persistent headache. Welder grumbles, wondering aloud why it should be Claude's headache when it'll be his hands doing the work. Still muttering, he hands the pouch to Karina. The moment it touches her fingers, her entire demeanor shifts. Her expression hardens, and her eyes narrow. Welder notices and questions her reaction. She replies that it's dangerous, far more than anything she's held before. The sensation is familiar and terrifying. It feels like the first crystal she ever touched, only this time, it feels like something is about to erupt. That warning is all Claude needs to act. He steps forward and snatches the pouch from her hands. With deliberate speed, he draws the crystal out. A curse slips from his lips as he examines it. Whatever the imperial family sent him is far beyond what they should have. Welder, now serious, tells Karina to watch closely. This, he says, is Claude's identity. Karina watches with wide eyes. Claude doesn't look like a mage. So what is he? What exactly can he do with these crystals? Her question is answered a moment later. Claude's hands begin to glow, light pulsing from within his palms. The room fills with an overwhelming energy. Then, a burst. Smoke explodes outward, thick and stinging. Karina stumbles back, coughing, trying to clear her eyes. Where did all this smoke come from? She wonders in dismay. As the air settles, her vision clears, and there, standing at the center of it all, is Claude. In his hand gleams a sword, shimmering, alive, and unmistakably forged from the very crystal that had threatened to erupt. Claude is visibly relieved when the sword finally materializes in his hand. There's a flash of satisfaction in his eyes, the kind that only comes after a long string of failed attempts. Welder, noticing this subtle pride, arches an eyebrow and asks what Claude means by this time. The implication doesn't escape him. Claude admits, somewhat sheepishly, that he had tried to draw a sword from the magic crystal that had reacted so strongly to Karina, but the process failed. Wilder's amusement quickly vanishes. His voice turns sharp as he reminds Claude, again, how many times he's told him to be more careful with these things. One mistake, especially with dangerous magic crystals, can lead to disaster. Claude pouts, attempting to wave off the scolding with a playful remark about how he only ever makes 1 or 2 mistakes a year. Wilder sighs, deeply unimpressed. If something ever does go wrong, he says, it won't be Claude picking up the pieces. It'll be him. Claude, meanwhile, glances toward Karina. Her ability to sense the sword before it even took shape doesn't escape his notice. He had underestimated her. She might be even more gifted than he initially thought. He thanks her sincerely, saying that if she hadn't been there, he might have accidentally triggered a disaster with the Emperor's crystal. He mentions wanting to reward her for her help, but Karina quickly brushes off the offer. Still, there's a flicker in her eyes, an internal conflict. She tells him it's fine, but inwardly, she's thinking she wouldn't exactly refuse a reward if he insisted. Claude, catching her subtle curiosity, decides it's only fair she knows what happened. He reveals that he is, in fact, a magic knight. Wilder scoffs at the way Claude blurts it out, questioning how Karina is supposed to make sense of something so vague. Claude glares at him, clearly annoyed, and says he was about to elaborate anyway. Karina, listening intently, begins to wonder about the relationship between the two. Their banter is constant, but there's something deeper there, familiarity, perhaps even trust. Claude explains that magic knights are individuals capable of drawing swords out of magic crystals. Even without possessing the gift of magic themselves, experienced knights can wield these swords forged from pure, concentrated mana. In simpler terms, he adds he's something like a blacksmith, though Karina can tell there's more to it than that. She points out something peculiar, that the sword he drew didn't just feel like mana forged into a weapon. It carried a kind of magic she can only describe as dangerous. Claude seems caught off guard by this observation. Confused but curious, he hands the sword to Wilder for safekeeping. Then he turns to Karina and approaches her with a serious look in his eyes. He says he's met many gifted individuals in his life, but none quite like her. He takes her hand and asks her, formally, to become a retainer of his house. His grip is steady, but there's an unmistakable urgency in his voice. He claims that if he lets this chance slip by, even his late parents would never forgive him. Karina is stunned. Retainer? Of a duke's house, it doesn't make sense. Retainers are usually chosen from noble families or at least daughters of knights. She wonders, quietly and with growing confusion, why he would offer such a position to someone he knows so little about. Claude, standing close enough that she can feel the warmth radiating from him, asks her again. She blushes, overwhelmed by his presence, and voices the thought that's been weighing on her. How can someone like her, a commoner, be his retainer? Claude laughs, not unkindly. He assures her that half of his retainers are commoners. Most nobles have long since moved to the capital, treating regions like this one as nothing more than countryside retreats. Wilder, too, was once a retainer of Claude's household, even though he was never a knight. He had served Claude's parents for many years and knew Claude since childhood. Then Claude asks once more, would she be willing to accept the offer? Karina's heart tightens. She thinks of her children, Roland and Alyssa. She tells Claude that she can't. She has children to care for. Claude, undeterred, says that if she works for him, she'll be able to support them far better than she can now. The pay will be significantly higher. But Karina, thoughtful and grounded, points out that knight retainers are expected to perform a lot of duties. Wouldn't that mean she'd have even less time with her children? Claude agrees. The position would indeed come with responsibilities that might pull her away. She respectfully declines again. He looks at her, a little puzzled, and asks why. She explains that she can't swear loyalty to him. Claude wonders aloud if her decision is tied solely to her children, and Karina confirms. She simply doesn't want to take away the time she needs to care for them. Claude is quietly relieved. At least it's not because she's avoiding him as a person. He voices the thought, and Karina panics a little, quickly denying it. But then she wonders, was it really that obvious that she feels uneasy around him? Claude laughs softly, then asks her how her children are adjusting. The way he smiles while asking, gentle and bright, momentarily stuns her. He really does look handsome like that. She answers that they're doing well. He asks next if they like attending school. Before Karina can respond, Wilder steps in and points out that Karina used to live in the mountains. She likely doesn't know much about the town of Taurus. Claude counters that even in rural areas, children should be sent to school. Isn't that standard? Wilder shrugs. Not everywhere. He explains that school enforcement isn't consistent. In Taurus, there are public institutions, schools, for families who can't afford private tutors. Karina listens closely. It reminds her of the school she once attended in her past life. She asks what exactly the children are taught there. Claude says the basics, mathematics and writing. Karina tilts her head, unconvinced. Is that really all? Claude nods, asking what more could be needed. She replies that perhaps they could teach more complex problems, higher-level thinking. Wilder bursts out laughing. If schools started doing that, he says, parents would just complain that the kids were being taught things useless for making a living. That evening, Claude walks her back home. Karina finds herself deep in thought. If Roland and Melissa go to school, they might make new friends. But what matters most is whether they want to go. She decides to talk to them about it. She picks up some cookies. Something simple, a small treat for the conversation. But when she reaches home and opens the door, her heart drops. The room is a mess, ransacked, overturned. Something terrible has happened. Panic seizes her. She searches frantically for her children, calling their names, but there's no answer. The fear deepens, her thoughts spiraling. Were they taken? She falls to the floor, tears streaming down her cheeks. She blames herself, saying she should never have left them alone. She should have protected them. The one person she knows who could have done this, the one capable of such a thing, is Rink. That bastard? Karina hears Roland calling her. The voice is faint, muffled by the closed bathroom door, but it's unmistakably his. Concern flashes through her chest like lightning. She quickly gets up and rushes to the bathroom, her heart pounding. Without hesitation, she bursts open the door, eyes wide with worry, as she calls out to him. Inside, she finds both Roland and Alyssa, completely covered in flour. It clings to their hair, their faces, their clothes, white dust trailing along the bathroom floor and spreading out into the hallway like a blizzard had swept through. Karina freezes for a moment, then drops to her knees, relief washing over her in waves. She had feared something far worse. Her mind had gone to dark places, to rank, to the possibility of danger returning. But it's only flour, just a mess, just innocent children being children. The two children quickly explain what happened. They had tried to clean up the flour they had spilled, but clearly it didn't go well. Karina listens intently, her shoulders beginning to relax as they speak. Roland apologizes, his eyes lowered in shame. He admits that they've messed up not only the bathroom, but the room as well. Karina wipes at her eyes, holding back the tears that had formed out of fear and now fall from sheer relief. She tells them that it's all right and asks gently what exactly happened. They explain further, their voices a little nervous. They had wanted to make tasty bread, something warm, something special. They tried to use magic for it, but things didn't go the way they had hoped. It hadn't worked. Roland adds that it's because their uncle, Ring, never taught them how to use magic for cooking. Only destructive magic, only spells for harm and battle. Karina's heart tightens at that. She pulls the two of them into a hug, holding them close. She knows they must have been startled, perhaps even frightened by the failure. She knows too well that Rank's teachings were harsh, that he saw magic only as a weapon. She worries for a moment, worries that the children will come to fear magic or find it unpleasant, just as she once did. But maybe she should feel relieved. They still want to use magic. As she holds them, Karina notices Melissa fidgeting with something behind her back. Curious, she asks what it is. Melissa hesitates, then admits it's the blanket she got dirty during their chaotic baking attempt. Karina smiles softly and suggests that she will wash it. She tells them to go and clean themselves up instead. As she begins cleaning the room, gathering flour-dusted sheets and wiping down surfaces, Karina's thoughts drift to the past. Cleaning this mess reminds her of the days she used to scrub Rink's laboratory. She remembers the guts of mysterious creatures stuck on the walls, the stench of strange potions, the stain of alchemical failures.